go, yeah, you do so many things, and eventually, if you do enough, you get to heaven. And yet, my friends, that is not the story that the Bible tells. That is not the story that the Bible tells about why Jesus came and why it's such good news for you as you pass by today. So here's the story in a very simplified form. So many people pass by and go, what has God ever done for me? I don't see him doing anything. What has he done? Well, my friends, the Bible is very simple in its answers to that question. God has given life and breath and every good gift to every single person passing by today, and I bet none of you have ever acknowledged the gift that you've been given, because many would say, well, what has God ever done for me? He's done absolutely nothing. And yet this is the truth, that God has given you life and breath and every good gift. So what is the purpose of your life? What is intended? That you use it for the glory of God. It's very simple. And people go, I have no interest in God, I don't really care about God. Well, that doesn't change the fact of why your life has been given. And this is what God has given to you. But what does the Bible say? For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, stories that we don't know as well as before, like the crown jewels and the diamond as it made its way across the oceans. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Now if you're religious and you're passing by, let me ask you the question. Where does it say in here, do X, Y and Z all the days of your life to see if God will ever accept you? Where does it say you've got to follow all these laws, pray 7 times a day, go to the mosque, go to church, go to the temple, do whatever it is, and then one day maybe you'll be right in God's sight? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Do you know that God has already given what is necessary for you to get to heaven? And I'm sure that many people passing by have very little concern whatsoever for their fate once death takes them over. Because here's the thing, this is just the waiting room for eternity. We spend all of this life and then we die and we stand before God, and God has done something necessary for us because we can never do it ourselves. If you follow any religion today, it normally says do this, this, this and this, and one day you'll be right in God's sight. But Jesus Christ, being God, came into this world and demonstrates that your religious efforts mean absolutely nothing. So when you strive by praying 7 times a day, by giving to the poor, whatever it is, to attain some kind of religious level where you become right in God's sight, it will never get you to heaven. It's worthwhile. Doing good is a worthwhile thing, but it doesn't get you to heaven. What does get you to heaven? Whoever believes in him, Jesus Christ, shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Why is that the case? Because the sin that we commit against God is so serious that only someone perfect could ever wipe it out. Are you perfect as you pass by? You may be looking at me and saying, I don't think you're perfect, and you're absolutely right. I'm not perfect, but yet I'm going to heaven, not because of what I've done, but because of what God has done on my behalf in the person of Jesus Christ. What about you? What is your hope for heaven? What is your hope for what comes after death and what comes beyond death? Because we all, the Bible says, once to die and then the judgment. Why will we all be judged? Because of this rebellion and this sin against God. The standard for heaven is absolute perfection. It's not balancing the scales, it's absolute perfection. So anybody passing by, including me, is unfit for heaven. You could never do enough to make yourself fit to God. Well, here's the thing. God himself, the man comes to Jesus and says, good teacher, and he says, there is no one good but God. And the reason for that is that only God is perfect, only God is sinless, and he, knowing that we could never do it ourselves, loved this world and you so much that he came and died that you and I could have life. What does it require of you? That you acknowledge that you've rebelled against God, and the reason that we die is because of the sin that we commit, and I'm going to die too, I'm no different. And yet, we all think that we can make our own way there. But we will perish if that's the idea that we've got. Jesus paid the price. Many people say, I don't want, and someone did actually say to me the other day, I won't accept going to heaven if I can't say I've earned it myself. It's such a tragic thing, because whoever believes in him should not perish. You acknowledge that you've sinned before a holy God, you accept and acknowledge that you can never be perfect, which is the standard for heaven, and you turn and put your trust in the work of another. If I want to get into Buckingham Palace, I'm never going to achieve it of my own ability. I have no right to be able to enter the throne room of Buckingham Palace and stand before the Queen. But if Prince William comes to me and says, "Do you know what? I'm going to welcome you into the presence of the Queen, my grandmother," he has the right to bring me into the presence of the Queen. Why? Because he's heir to the throne. I have no right. But if I go with Prince William, I can meet the Queen if he offers that to me. And equally, Jesus has said, if you put your trust in him, turn from your sin and stop trying to make yourself fit for heaven, then he will wipe away your sin. He will make you right before God today, not tomorrow, not 3 weeks from now, not a month from now, but today. And you can know that when you die, whatever day that is, whenever it comes, that you can go to heaven because of what Jesus has done. Like Prince William taking me to the Queen. That's how it works. Jesus, being in very nature God, can enable us, having paid the price on our behalf, wiped our debt, to take us into the presence of the Queen. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Many people say, well, God's just angry at me. God is very angry at sin, and he's angry at those who commit sin. And yet, the period when his anger receives its fullness is on the day of judgment, which is yet to come. He didn't come to condemn you today. Today he sent a fool such as me on the streets of Lancaster to tell you how you can have peace with God, and that anger and just wrath of God can be turned aside so that you can have peace with him. And amazingly, many will pass by, have no interest whatsoever,